So how did world leaders react to the bombing in Iran of nuclear reactors by the United States? We're going to talk about that. Not all of it was positive, and some of these will surprise you. So let's start here and look at this. GBU-57 MOPs, massive ordnance penetrators, were dropped on Iran's Fordow nuclear enrichment facility last night. We know that that happened. We know that another one was hit with both these, and a third was hit with Tomahawk cruise missiles. Okay, so that happened, and then this was called Operation Midnight Hammer. And I just was showing this. This was the whole briefing of Operation Midnight Hammer. We talked about that in a live stream this afternoon. If you haven't seen it, we went through all of it, and I answered all the questions that I could along that line. Now, the Iranians aren't very happy about that, as you can imagine. The Iranians are calling for revenge and vengeance and whatever. Red line was crossed. The West betrayed us, says Tehran. They vow revenge after U.S. hits Iranian nuclear facilities. So what happens here is it's an open question whether they're actually going to really try to get revenge, in which case you have a broader war, or if they do something to show that they have done something and then they just don't incur more wrath because everybody knows that it's kind of staged. Okay, here's some somewhat balanced analysis, and then I'll show you some of the crazy analysis, and then I'll show you some of the better analysis. Okay, Michael McFaul, he's the former ambassador to Russia during the Obama years. Now that Trump has made his decision, I hope the mission was successful and will end forever Iran's nuclear weapons program. I fear more dramas to come. Okay, McFaul was calling for Trump administration to be very careful, be very measured, think through all this. And yeah, I mean, he's a Democrat, but he's also thoughtful. And so that is, even though Trump's a Republican, he's a Democrat. He's still cautious about it, but hopeful. Okay, he's an American too. Brit Hume, the Fox News chief political analyst, wrote this. President Trump says U.S. raid obliterated Iran's nuclear enrichment facilities. That's a broad claim, and the world will be a better place if it turns out to be true. Like, as a journalist, he should be skeptical. Even if he's a Republican and Trump's a Republican, he should still be skeptical about it. Military adventures, even successful ones, have unpredictable consequences. But there is a reason to hope that the world's tyrants will be chastened by what has happened tonight. I think both McFaul and Brit Hume were both very balanced in their assessments. Now, then we get to Antonio Guterres of the United Nations. He is gravely alarmed by the use of force by the United States against Iran today. Well, he wasn't gravely alarmed about the Iranians who almost had a nuclear weapon. This is a dangerous escalation in a region already on the edge and a direct threat to international peace and security. There is a growing risk that this conflict could rapidly get out of control. That is a true statement. I've got to give him that. It is true that this could spin out of control. It's also true that an Iran with a nuclear weapon would be catastrophic for the world, with catastrophic consequences for civilians, the region, and the world. That worried about it getting out of control with catastrophic consequences. I call on member states to de-escalate and to uphold their obligations under the UN Charter and other rules of international law. At this perilous hour, it's critical to avoid a spiral of chaos. I would agree. I don't know whether it'll go that way or not, but okay, that's fair. There is no military solution. The only path forward is diplomacy. The only hope is peace. Well, you had to treat the problem. If you didn't deal with the problem, it would be far, far worse. What was Putin saying? Let's go back just 2 days. This says Putin today, but the day here was June 20th. It's June 22nd right now. So the day before the strikes, he said this: despite the risks, we built a reactor in Bushehr and signed a contract for 2 more. We are not evacuating personnel. We raised this issue with Israel and President Trump. We act within international law and demand the safety of our staff. Well, everybody knew what was about to happen was happening, right? A quiet but clear warning: Russia isn't leaving Iran, and if Israel or the U.S. puts Russian lives at risk, the consequences will escalate. Well, let's see what else was being said. By the way, before we do that, Jay in Kyiv posted this: the regime change in Iran is unacceptable, according to the Kremlin. Now, this was posted on June 20th as well, and he just said, Putin's meeting with Iran tomorrow will be hilarious. Well, I don't know about hilarious, but it'll be something. It'll be different than what they thought it was going to be just 2 days ago. Spetsnaz 007 is a Russian site, and it's followed by the likes of RT and others. If we look at this, Che Bao, Scott Ritter, Kirill Dmitriev, RT, Margarita Simonian. So I show this for a reason, because this is their perspective. Good night, good morning. It's past 6 a.m. I'm off to bed. Hopefully, when I wake up, the world is still intact. Trump is such a disappointment, not only to Americans, but foreigners who looked up to him to bring peace. Well, he's a Russian. He has a very pro-Russian bias. This is the way that he wants things to go, that Trump will just roll over. On Iran, he didn't. On Ukraine, it looks like so far he has, but I don't know. Maybe something will change. I can't predict the future, but he clearly treats Iran, the crisis there, very differently than he treats it in Ukraine, which is unfortunate. Scott Ritter, Douglas McGregor, folks like that are all on, like, they're not happy about this. They didn't want this to happen to Israel. He says, hey, Pakistan, how's that Nobel Peace Prize nomination looking now? Trump is a warmonger, not a peacemaker. No, you're not a warmonger if you're stopping the warmonger. That's not a warmonger. Doing it for light or frivolous reasons, that would be a warmonger. Now, if we look inside the Situation Room, these are pictures from the Situation Room, we find that notably, Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, is missing. Yeah, how about that? So you see Rubio and you see the Secretary of Defense, Secretary of State, Secretary of Defense, but Tulsi Gabbard isn't there. That's really, really interesting to my mind. In fact, Tulsi Gabbard posted this back in January 5th of 2020. No war with Iran. Get our troops out of Iraq and Syria now. Okay, no war with Iran. Well, no, we don't want a war with Iran, but it's interesting. Even RT picked up on this that said, no sign of Tulsi in the Situation Room. That's interesting. RT is flummoxed, according to Julia Davis. Okay, what did Dmitry Medvedev have to say? Well, you know, he goes on these rants. What have Americans accomplished with their nighttime strikes on 3 nuclear sites in Iran? He's not going to find anything good, of course. 1, critical infrastructure of the nuclear fuel cycle appears to have been unaffected or sustained only minor damage. I don't know how he would even know that, but okay. 2, the enrichment of nuclear material, and now we can say it outright, the future production of nuclear weapons will continue. Well, I'm not sure how you're going to continue to do that when these sites have been destroyed. Like, these were the places where you would enrich it. Number 3, listen to this. A number of countries are ready to directly supply Iran with their own nuclear warheads. Yeah, he's saber-rattling. Number 6, Iran's political regime has survived. Well, for now, we don't know whether that's going to survive long term, but at least for now, that wasn't the point and that wasn't the purpose, but okay. And in all likelihood, it has come out even stronger. I don't know, like, how much vodka he's drinking, but that can't possibly be right. The U.S. now is entangled in a new conflict with prospects of a ground operation looming on the horizon. I'm not sure that that's the case. I don't think that there's any interest in having a ground war in Iraq or in Iran right now. I just think, like, these were the strikes. This was it. I mean, there might be something of toppling the government, but that seems like it would be an internal Iranian thing, not U.S. troops intervening. Number 8, Donald Trump, once hailed as the president of peace, has now pushed the U.S. into another war. That's up to the Iranians whether there will be another war, but he hasn't been like, hey, let's go have a actual land war in Iran. Number 9, the vast majority of countries around the world oppose the actions of Israel and the United States. I don't know that that's accurate. I'm going to be looking for data, and if you see that, please send it to me. At this rate, Trump can forget about the Nobel Peace Prize. Well, maybe he can, maybe he can't. I'm not sure if he was calculated to get it anyway, but okay, that's what Medvedev had to say. How about his colleague? Kremlin has condemned U.S. attacks on Iran's nuclear sites by calling them irresponsible, as if rolling over the border of Ukraine from Russia was a responsible act. Again, Medvedev had said a number of countries are ready to directly supply Iran with their own nuclear warheads. Okay, let's hear what they had to say on Russian state TV. This is a translation of voiceover.
Restoring the nuclear facilities associated with the program in Natanz will take not just years, but decades. After all, Iran is now essentially losing what it has built with our help since 1995, while the foundations were actually laid back in the 1970s during the Shah's era.
That's with Russian help since 1995. Okay. Here's Marjorie Taylor Greene. She doesn't like this one bit. Every time America is on the verge of greatness, we get involved in another foreign war. There would not be bombs falling on the people of Israel if Netanyahu had not dropped bombs on the people of Iran first. Like, you're missing the big picture here, Marjorie. Israel is a nuclear-armed nation. This is not our fight. Peace is the answer, but you can't have peace that's an unjust peace, or you can't have peace when Iran is saying death to Israel and we're going to wipe you off the map and they're creating a nuclear weapon. That's not going to be peace any more than you're going to have the unjust peace that Russia wants to settle with right now. Okay. Many of these countries issued statements condemning us, says Marco Rubio, but they knew the score. Listen to what he had to say.
Are we now at war with Iran?
No, we're not. This is not a war against Iran. This is very simple. 67 days ago, the President of the United States sent the Iranians a letter, and it said, you're not going to have nuclear weapons. You're not going to have a militarized nuclear program. Let's negotiate. I want to do this diplomatically. I want to do this peacefully. They tried to play him along the way they've played every American president for the last 35 years. And, the president told them, if we don't get a deal, which is what he wanted, then I'll have to handle it differently. And that's what he did last night. He handled it differently. But that was an Iranian choice. We didn't make that choice. They did. By playing games with Donald Trump, they made a huge mistake. And President Trump acted last night. And I think the world today is safer and more stable than it was 24 hours ago. And a bunch of these countries putting out statements condemning us, privately, they all agree with us that this needed to be done. They got to do what they got to do for, their own public relations purposes. But the only people in the world that are unhappy about what happened in Iran last night is the regime in Iran.
Yeah, so the interesting couple statements here. One, these other countries are privately saying, hey, look, this isn't really, we know what we're saying publicly, but it's really good that you did that. And the other thing is saying that Iran made the choice. Well, kind of, but we made the choice. We ultimately did it. Take responsibility. We did this because they did that. Okay, let's keep moving. Some other things. Netanyahu is thrilled. Listen to this.
Congratulations, President Trump. Your bold decision to target Iran's nuclear facilities with the awesome and righteous might of the United States will change history. In Operation Rising Lion, Israel has done truly amazing things. But in tonight's action against Iran's nuclear facilities, America has been truly unsurpassed. It has done what no other country on earth could do. History will record that President Trump acted to deny the world's most dangerous regime the world's most dangerous weapons. His leadership today has created a pivot of history that can help lead the Middle East and beyond to a future of prosperity and peace. President Trump and I often say, peace through strength. First comes strength, then comes peace. And tonight, President Trump and the United States acted with a lot of strength.
Yeah. Okay. So you might not like Netanyahu. That's immaterial. You might not like Trump. That's immaterial. Would the world be a safer place? Here's the way that you frame this. Would the world be a safer place or a less safe place if Iran had a nuclear weapon? And if your answer is that it would be a less safe place, this was probably a good thing to stop them from doing the kinds of things that they said that they would do. And simultaneously, you get a twofer because you've just weakened an ally of Russia who is over the border in Ukraine against international laws, and they shouldn't be there, and they were depending on Iran for much of their military support. So Russia's weaker as a consequence as well. If you look at our U.S. military doctrine, Russia is an ongoing strategic threat to the United States. You might not have a particular problem with it. Maybe you're isolationist and you don't mind Russia, but Russia has historically been an adversary of the United States. It is now weaker because its ally, Iran, is weaker, and that's ultimately a good thing. Okay, Reagan Caucus posted this. Wow, based Trump. Okay, they don't get to say that a lot. They're usually very adversarial about Trump, based, by the way, if you don't know, this is the kid saying that's a good thing. This is like a Gen Z kind of language. I had to learn it from my kids. Okay, Vance is likely in shambles. Think of all the positive externalities Europe gets from this, so he's going to hate that. But okay, it's still a positive thing for the world. Mike Pence, Trump's former vice president, who had a pretty dramatic falling out with him, President Trump made the right call to deploy American forces to strike nuclear sites in Iran, and he should be commended for his decisive leadership. Iran could never be allowed to obtain a nuclear weapon. Iran should now stand down and abandon any thought of retaliation against Americans or be prepared to face the consequences. I don't think they're going to do the former, so I think they're going to get the latter. Tonight, President Trump proved again that the United States of America is the leader of the free world and America stands with Israel. Thank you, Mr. President. God bless our troops. Okay, just a couple more. John Bolton, who also had a big break with Trump, very famously as well. John Bolton enthusiastically supports Trump's decision to strike Iran's nuclear facilities. You rarely get to hear John Bolton say something positive about Trump, but here he is.
Thanks for being here. Were you surprised that President Trump took such decisive action?
Well, let me say this unequivocally. I think President Trump made the right decision for America to attack Iran's nuclear weapons program. And I think we're on the verge of potentially seeing regime change in Iran as part of that. I think this is a huge change in the Middle East. It was a decisive action. It was the right thing to do. I thought somebody should do it for a long time, but better late than never.
Okay, so will there be regime change? I have no idea. Maybe there'll be a color revolution. I don't know. This wasn't to do that, but it destabilized Iran enough that that could actually take place. Okay, Michael McFaul again, no matter if you were for or against this Trump decision, I had a lot of questions, as I wrote in my Substack yesterday. Americans should be grateful that our military showed superb capabilities and no one was killed or injured. Hoping now for the same if Iran strikes Americans in the region. Now, by the way, if you go back and watch the last video I posted where we were watching the press conference with the Secretary of Defense and the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, they didn't fire at the U.S. at all on the way in or on the way out. They were uncontested the entire way, and that's mostly thanks to Israel. Okay. Last little bit, I'll leave you with this meme. After Guterres' statement, sometimes the universe makes the memes. United Nations on the helmet, UN, involved in peace. Well, I mean, maybe uninvolved in peace. All right, my friends, that's all that I have for you right now. Check back later, hit the bell to subscribe, and I'll keep these coming. I talk about Ukraine daily, but I'm also talking about what's going on with Israel and Iran because it's important. Thank you for your time, the likes, the shares, the subscribes, and thank you for being the kind of person that cares about the world we live in.